Hey, good morning there, guys. This is Rockin Dave Blair filling in again, second week in a row for the Guru of Geek, Marlo Anderson. And I know you're not missing him that much. I guess I'm not either. But I'm actually going to see him tomorrow in Vegas. Seems that's his second home lately. Anyway, I'm excited to be back here and hosting this Tech Ranch. And last week we talked a little bit about the energy sector, but more importantly, we talked a little bit about the education component that's part of the whole industry and looking at the future. And I'm really happy to have Ron Ness, who's Executive Director for the North Dakota Petroleum Council, joining me this morning. So, Ron, welcome aboard.
Well, Dave, thank you for the invite. It's great to be here, and technology is certainly something that we have seen play out throughout. Really, we're a decade into this Bakken play, and to me, it's a 100% technology play. The area of the Bakken has essentially been a research park for the world over the last 10 years, and we have really just begun. And I think we've got a lot of fun stuff we can cover today in terms of what technology means and where we think it's heading.
Well, you know, we saw such a fast growth in the Bakken here over the course of the last 10 years, and you know, things have slowed down a little bit, but not on the technology side. In fact, it's probably gave us a little break to really review where we needed to be at and what's happening. And you know, I think we're at that point where there's so much emerging new technologies out there, and I guess we want to just maybe address some of those and what you see happening, particularly in the Bakken. So maybe you can just give us a quick snapshot of North Dakota Petroleum Council and kind of what you guys do. I think viewers would like to know that.
Sure. The North Dakota Petroleum Council is the trade association which represents the oil and gas industry in North Dakota. And oil was discovered in 1951, and the industry quickly decided it needed a voice. We've been here since 1952, and we're the voice of the oil and gas industry in North Dakota. We provide the education, the government and regulatory work that needs to be done, but also really the communication and engagement between our members, providing events and with the public. So the last decade of our long history has been a very busy decade, and we've had so much going on here, and the world's always watching. So, and really back to your comment about it's been 3 years now since we saw the downturn in oil price, and I vividly remember a discussion in the middle of October of 2014 about, you know, that oil price really started to turn when the dollar turned around the 1st of July of that year, and then on Black Friday, OPEC made that decision to not do anything, and that was the big non-decision point that ultimately led to really a crash in oil prices, which tumbled oil prices down to around $30 and was really a crushing blow to an industry that had been chumming along at $80 to $90 to $140 oil, which we all seem to forget, you know, and gas prices. But what happens in a downturn, just like what happens in a drought to farmers and ranchers, or to a financial crisis in your life or my life, what you do is you really step back, and that's when your accountants begin to do what accountants do. They sharpen up their pencils and their erasers. They cut the bottom line. They try and survive and get through these rough periods. And what we've seen happen with the American oil and gas producer, which I think the Middle Eastern OPEC nations and others thought they were going to crush the American oil and gas producer and thereby ultimately raise that price of oil, because they thought the Bakken and the other plays across the country were $80 or $90 oil plays. And I think we did too. But we soon recognized that once you begin to increase your efficiency and your technology, you can begin to lower that economic threshold of every barrel of Bakken, or every well in our case. And so we've seen the efficiencies come in line and the costs come down, but now you're really starting to see the effort of all of those brilliant people across the world. And when you say people across the world, the Bakken truly is a world oil play, and the brightest minds in the world are looking at this play and trying to bring their gadget or their newest technology into into this type of oil play, since we're the leader. We're the furthest along in maturity of the oil shale plays. This is the place to bring your new technology, and you're a big part of that, and the companies you've worked for. But many people are always coming in, looking at, where's my entry point into the oil and gas industry with this new technology. So that's what we're seeing, and there's a lot of it taking off, and it's having an impact.
I want to go back a little bit to your first comment of the first Bakken oil play back in 1951, and what do you think? What was the newest technology? And I know you weren't even born yet. I wasn't even thought of yet either. But we started off with vertical drilling, okay, and I think part of what I'm getting to here is even on the drilling side of capturing crude oil and particularly shale. Can you walk us through? We went to vertical, and then how far down did we go? And then eventually we looked at going horizontal, okay, and then the world really changed in this whole fracking technology. So can you maybe just walk us through that a little bit, Ron?
Well, it's truly an amazing history of what's transpired over North Dakota's history of oil and gas. And we started drilling oil wells, attempting oil wells, and people were looking for oil because they felt the geological structure of the Williston Basin, which 360 million years ago was like Costa Rica in western North Dakota. It was a shallow seabed with lots of plants and organic materials. And by the way, climates do change. They change very slowly, but literally the Williston Basin, and in fact the city of Dickinson oversits the Lodgepole Mounds, which were prolific producers in the 1990s. And that was more of a slant drilling underneath the city of Dickinson from just outside the city. So when you see those oil wells, those are the kind of an initial version of horizontal drilling. But initially in the 40s, you had a lot of people looking for oil or gas in the Williston Basin and drilling holes all over North Dakota. In fact, every county in the state has had a well drilled in it except for, I believe it's Hillsborough, or just north of whatever county that is. I'm drawing Trail County.
Yeah.
It's Trail County. So we'll start there. But, then you moved into the 50s and you didn't have enough money. You didn't go deep enough. You didn't find oil. And then the third well drilled in 1951 was a Bakken well. And they found oil, and they named the Bakken layer of geology after a farmer who had lived on a hill north of Tioga, North Dakota.
Well, we're going to be joining Ron here back in our next segment to even further talk about some of the horizontal drilling, the fracking, and all of that. And I really appreciate Ron being part of the conversation this morning, and look forward to continuing this at the next segment. Rockin Dave Blair, enjoying the morning. Hope everybody else is. We'll see you soon.
Right now, 47.
On Twitter, Facebook, online, and YouTube.
Hey.
Supertalk1270.com.
Hey, back for our next segment. Rockin Dave Blair here with Ron Ness, who I incorrectly said he was his executive director of the North Dakota Petroleum Council, and he's actually President Trump's right-hand man in oil and gas, I think, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, though, we talk about, North Dakota leading the way, and Trump's made it pretty well known that being here has been very important. I mean, he kicked off the campaign at the North Dakota Oil and Gas Conference last May, and now he's back. He came back here again a couple months ago, so he sees the importance of what we're doing here, I believe.
To have President Trump here and have him make his first presidential appearance here at a refinery, Dave, is says a lot for energy in America, I think, and it was kind of interesting. We had one of his cabinet officials at our annual meeting a month ago, and he said something to a group of us that the president isn't doing these things for you. He's doing them for the American people because he believes energy independence is Energy dominance is actually the word that guy used. Energy dominance is good for the American people, and so don't think he's doing these things for you energy industry people. He's doing them because he thinks it's the key to restoring our position as the dominant world power and helping our friends and allies with energy. So it's kind of an interesting twist from where we've been the last 8 years.
And we're getting there. We're seeing that dominance factor happen here and becoming energy independent. And Bakken definitely is leading the way in that as well. As we continue to talk a little bit about the technologies associated with drilling, we talked a little bit about our first. Back in 1951 doing vertical drilling, and then we just hit a little bit about horizontal drilling, but what kind of impact that's had. And then let's talk a little bit about the fracking side of things, let our viewers know a little bit about how that works as well.
Well, the amazing thing is you hear all of this about, hydraulic fracturing or I call it fracture stimulation or completions of the well, essentially. We've been doing that in America since the 1940s. The difference, what we're doing today versus what we couldn't do in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s when we looked at this Bakken resource in this very thin shale that is like a big blanket over 15,000 square miles of western North Dakota, is we didn't have the ability to drill down 2 miles and then turn that drill bit and then drill out 2 miles and keep your pipe or your drill bit in that economic zone. So instead of 10 to 30 feet of economics, you now have 20,000 feet of economic connectivity, and the ability to be able to figure out how to fracture stimulate that entire 2 miles is really the game-changing technology. And in an oil shale, they had been doing this in Texas and then in Pennsylvania in gas, but in an oil shale, we were the first to do it in the Bakken, and we figured that out right in Montreal County in Parshall and Sanish Field, which are going to be two of the all-time biggest oil fields in the history of the United States. But our ability to stimulate that out 30 to 60 times and section by section and stimulate all of that rock with these hairline-type fractures, they're like micro veins that come in to pump the oil into your heart. That's essentially what this fracturing is doing, is it's pumping water, and in that water is carried this sand in a gel. And when it gets down in those hot areas, it releases that sand, and that sand stays between those little fractures you create in that rock, much like a tombstone, because that's the Bakken has no porosity and no permeability, which are the two things you look for when you try and produce oil. Bakken has neither of those, but it's oil-rich, saturated with all that plant and organic matter from 360 million years ago that it was heated and turned into, essentially oil and gas now. So it is made from plants and animals, and it's so pretty amazing what we have figured out what to do with that. Of course, once we get it to the ground, and how it's basically comprises everything we're looking at in this room, and not only our transportation fuels, but those plastics and those fabrics are all related from that petroleum.
Interesting, and I've heard some statistics, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, until we started understanding more about the shale formation and horizontal drilling, we were doing vertical drilling. It was kind of almost hit and miss in a lot of cases. The success rate wasn't as good. Now the success rate is, you very seldom would even drill and not hit oil. I don't think that's even heard of. Correct. Well,
we have certainly identified the what we call the economic edges of the Bakken, where that Bakken is mature and the oil can be produced. But you're essentially a mining operation today in these fields. Every producer still has their own technology, so it's all about technology in order to figure out the way they think you're going to get more recovery. But with the best technology in the world, Dave, out of every 100 barrels of oil out there, we still leave 92 or 93 of them behind. So the size of the prize, the opportunity going forward is going to continue to attract all of those great minds of the world here and the capital here to figure out if you get one more barrel of oil, it's like $2 billion over time. Yeah. So just think if we can get to 18% or 21%, and that's really what drives investment. And whether we're talking about technology in energy or oil and gas, or you're talking about technology in anything, that's why we keep seeing people come here with their ideas. And bit by bit, you figure out not only how to get more, but how to get it better and how to do it environmentally safer, because those are the ideas that sell and the things that these companies are all looking at. So that ability over time to figure out how to turn that drill bit horizontally in that thin shale and then fracture stimulate it, that was just the beginning of the technology, really. That cracked the code, but now you've got everything going down that wellbore. The amount of data you're collecting, which is another issue all of it, in and of itself, and the management of that data and the evaluation. So many career opportunities out there for people in math and science, and really all those people that are inventors.
Yeah, we talked about that last week with Terry Filing with the University of Mary starting their engineering program, and what a great opportunity to explore those opportunities. One thing, Ron, I wanted to touch bases in is, as industry, oil and gas industry has been making some great headways and really making a lot of investment into North Dakota. That a lot of that investment is coming back to both the state, and also I want to talk a little bit about the research group that you guys have that's contributing a lot of money for new technologies to be addressed. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about that, Rob.
Well, research is something that, if you look back at the history of North Dakota and what we've done at NDSU, and just think if you're a North Dakotan and you look at corn being grown all across North Dakota and what we've been able to do through NDSU and our agricultural research, it's phenomenal. And the state of North Dakota, the legislature and others have had a huge impact in supporting agricultural research, and that was done with the lignite industry over the last decades. About 2002, Governor Hoeven and the legislature at that time led an effort to create an oil and gas research council. We now have a renewable research council as well, both of which are funded by a little share off of the oil and gas tax revenue. So off the oil tax revenue comes a little line in which funds an oil and gas research council. It also funds a renewable energy research council, which is a 50-50 match program. These funds have to be come through the research council. They are vetted and ranked and then voted upon, and ultimately the North Dakota Industrial Commission decides on each of these projects and whether or not it's something that will advance the oil and gas exploration and production and benefit the state as a whole, or whether it provides quality education in terms of the oil and gas issues that are facing North Dakota in terms of technology and things like that. So it's been a great benefit. I believe that's about $10 million of biennium right now. And, of course, that is matched and leveraged up. A tremendous amount of that money goes to the Energy Environmental Research Center out of Grand Forks, which is really the energy think tank in North Dakota. They are a world-renowned leader in energy research, and that's really where industry has put its chips in terms of advancing the Bakken and figuring out what that next recovery phase is going to be, and figuring out all of those individual little optimization units on each of these wells. That we have about 13,000 Bakken wells out there, and some say we're going to drill 60 or 70,000. So a lot of room to get better and a long ways to go.
We're going to touch maybe in our next segment a little bit about what's happening there in that oil-enhanced recovery using CO2. And I know the EERC has been playing a big role in that. And like Ron had mentioned earlier, the amount of oil that we're drilling is only just a fraction of what's down there that hopefully we can get at some time. So, the future is definitely bright for many, many years to come. And as we determine, more uses for oil and natural gas, and we haven't even really talked about natural gas. Maybe we can hit on that in the next segment too. Of North Dakota's Bakken is not a gas play; it's an oil play. But we're getting the benefits of the gas as well. So maybe we can talk just a little bit about that. But this research council, I think, is so important because obviously when you're doing R&D work, you need money. But the nice thing about the research council is that you have to have a industry partner come alongside of you, and I think that's so important too. It's not like state's giving you all of this money. I think it's a 50-50 match, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of really new cool things coming out of that. In that last segment, I'm going to talk a little bit of some of the stuff that I've been involved with because of my somewhat energy background and learning a little bit more about some of the new technologies that are out there. We're also going to hit briefly about the energy industry when it comes to data storage and that whole data network. And that's just a whole interesting topic in itself. So, Ron, I think it's been interesting to see this evolution from the 1940s and 50s and 60s and where we're at today and the amount of jobs we've created during that period of time. I mean, what kind of new jobs have been created out there? And we'll talk about that here when we get back. So stay tuned. Rockin Dave Blair filling in for the Guru Geek. Talk to you soon.
Right now, 47.
The Red River Farm Network. Ag News is here on Super Talk 1270.
We're back
Rockin
to the
Dave
Tech Ranch.
Blair back
Stream this program
with
now.
my co-host here. I guess I'll call you a co-host, Ron. He's been providing a lot of, I think, really useful information in regards to what's happening in North Dakota and particularly the Bakken. One thing I wanted to just touch bases on a little bit is, the amount of jobs that have been created here because of this Bakken play. And maybe you can, I don't know if you have any statistics or not, but maybe you can just address that a little bit, or if you wouldn't mind, Ron.
Dave, that is such a great point. And if the listeners haven't been to Western North Dakota in the last decade, I highly encourage you to go. And I drove up through Watford City and into Williston last week and back through Tioga and Minot. And, it's just absolutely simply amazing, the communities and the growth and what you see out there in terms of not only the industry jobs, but, of course, all of the hospitality and all of the things that come along with that and the new business startups are, frankly, just simply amazing, and the great infrastructure they now have in schools and event centers, and the highways are better, so there's affordable hotel rooms, so it's a great trip. But when we look at just the oil and gas side, we just happen to have done a survey in 2005, and we had about 3,000 oil wells in North Dakota. A lot of older wells and a little bit of activity, and we had about 5,000 employees in this industry. Today, even after 3 years of a downturn, we're still employing over 60,000 people directly in North Dakota's oil and gas industry, and those people are located all over North Dakota. Many, many businesses in Fargo and Grand Forks who provide either technology or other inputs into the Bakken. But it truly has become a juggernaut for really North Dakota's GDP and the millennial information. I saw this weekend that North Dakota is still the youngest state, and there's really only one thing that we can put that back on, and that's the ability to attract young people back and retain young people in North Dakota with great career opportunities like we have in North Dakota's energy sector and specifically in the Bakken, and those don't have to be out on a drilling rig as we're talking about today. Many of these are. We need salespeople, marketing people, but these technology jobs and all of the other affiliated jobs are really incredible. And we see these colleges responding, providing instrumentation and electronics at BSC all the way to, certainly work over rig management training up at Wilson State College. But petroleum engineering, geology, business is still our number one thing, which we're looking for business students. As you have all of these business activities across Western North Dakota, human resources, but these engineering programs are the ones that are really fun because we know those are tremendous careers, and you get to put your STEM skills to work that you're learning in school, and we know we've got opportunities for them going forward in the Bakken and in North Dakota.
I think the really cool thing, too, is that industry is definitely embracing this opportunity and wants to encourage kids, both, and I know there's a great education program that we have developed in going into the grade schools and middle schools, talking a little bit about the energy sector. And I mean, these are well-paying jobs for sure. But it was amazing when I was up in Williston here a couple of weeks ago. Again, all the help wanted signs. I mean, I think we're 2% unemployment here in the state. So again, we're reaching out and saying, hey, come to North Dakota. We've got good opportunities out here as well. So, it's fun seeing, kind of the second rebirth of the Bakken happening here.
And one of the neatest things about that is that still a huge percentage of our workforce does not need a college degree. However, you're going to need some type of technical training, and oftentimes the company may provide that to you, but it gives these students in North Dakota high schools and colleges some relevance for why they're learning computer skills, why they're learning accounting skills, why they're learning math and science. And we now have one of the biggest things in the world right here, which is a showcase of all of those skills that you learn in school, including English and including everything else. So we have really diversified our economy, our people. If you look at the diversity in those grade schools and high schools in Western North Dakota. So, but this technology and entrepreneurial spirit is something that's going to live on here for a long time, and going to be a lot of. Is there nothing better than seeing a couple of young North Dakotans come up with an idea and advance that idea? And we're seeing that all the way across North Dakota now in terms of people finding their little niche as this Bakken plays out.
Well, we've always said North Dakota's open for business, and we definitely are. I think there's been one other thing that's kind of changed the atmosphere a little bit too. Is the governor's challenge to industry to go out there and produce 2 million barrels a day versus 1 million barrels a day. I think that's achievable, isn't it?
Well, I that was quite a statement by the governor of North Dakota to all of us without a whole lot of discussion. It doesn't usually come that way, but that's really the way Governor Burgum thinks. Is he wants to push you. He wants you to get better at everything you're doing, and I think that's his Microsoft background. If you weren't getting better, you were out of business. And really, we all know that's going to take technology. It's going to take a method of figuring out how to get more than 7 or 8 barrels out of every 100 out of that Bakken. So that's going to come probably in terms of secondary recovery. We got to partner with our friends in the coal industry. We got to partner with the research university. We also have to look at a lot of discussion out there and some pilot projects going on re-injecting some of this ethane gas. That's probably very miscible in the oil. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to free that oil up off of that rock. Oil is saturated into that rock. You're trying to free that oil up and move it into that wellbore. It's highly pressured 2 miles underneath our feet. So that's all part of a huge science experiment. And if it works, we're going to need lots of CO2, which is going to be good for capturing CO2. We're going to have a place to re-inject that gas, and at the end of the day, you're going to get more oil out of the well, out of the existing well. So you're not creating a new footprint. You're going back into existing wells and just getting more out of it. So it's really a win-win, and that's probably what's on the mind of most CEOs and most of the boardrooms is okay. And in order for us to be a step ahead of the rest of the world, and because everybody's catching up to us somewhat in terms of, look at how they do this horizontal drilling, look at how they do this fracture stimulation, but we're years ahead of other plays in Texas and Oklahoma and Wyoming. So we got to figure this out, and that will take the ability to produce more oil from the existing wells to a whole new level, which should benefit our economy and really investment back into the Bakken, because it's a big capital play, and we need to attract that investment and enticement here to bring people here to invest in technology.
Changing directions here just a little bit. One thing me and Ron talked about briefly in between the breaks was, that this Bakken play has been an oil play, but along with that, we are producing a lot of natural gas, and there's always been that concerns out there of all the flaring that's going on, and how do we capture that? And I think the state and the industry is moving closer and closer to trying to capture all of that natural gas. And one of the things that I've been involved with most recently is LNG, and how big a play that's going to be worldwide, because there's so much need out there, and a lot of places don't have natural gas. The only way to ship it is liquid natural gas to get it to a destination, and I can see that being a huge play as well. The issue you always have when we're in North Dakota is getting it out to the masses. Pipelines have done a really good job of that, and obviously rail and truck. But can you just highlight a little bit about that, the whole natural gas side of things?
Well, natural gas is certainly, I think, changing the whole world economy in terms of the ability to, if you look at really Asia is just hungry for natural gas. They desperately want our natural gas, and you're seeing more and more liquefied natural gas export terminals being built across the Gulf Coast and the East Coast. In North Dakota, I think it's a function of, there's a lot of gas in Pennsylvania and Texas and other places. How do we find that niche market? If you make plastic beads from ethane from North Dakota natural gas liquids, the world wants them, and you can ship those in containers and using the Minot and other of these base intermodal ports for trains. So we got to find that niche market, whether it's, we hope we have fertilizer right now, because fertilizer is made from natural gas. A lot of our fertilizer in North Dakota is a leading agriculture producer, comes from China. So I'm confident that we're going to figure out this value-added thing, because we've got the natural gas here, and it is associated gas. This is not a gas play. It's gas in the oil. It's kind of a bonus. So it's throwing all of us for a bit of a loop, but we're figuring it out, and we're got to find homes for it. We got to find more uses for that natural gas. And on the flaring side, you're always going to have some flaring, because that flare is like a pilot light in your furnace, and if it's a safety mechanism, that gas got to be released. So we're certainly on the path to capturing most of that gas.
Well, as we wind down here in one last segment, we're going to talk about a couple technologies that I've been involved with, and one big one is the data storage and what's happening out there. So stay tuned. This is Rockin Dave Blair filling in for the Guru Geek. Watch for us in a few minutes.
Right now, 49.
Dave Ramsey is heard here. Super Talk 1270.
Hey, back for our last segment. Hope everybody's been enjoying listening to Ron Ness, President of North Dakota Petroleum Council, talk a little bit about the Bakken, what's happening out there, both on the oil play. We touched briefly a little bit about the gas play and those opportunities. But I'm gonna switch directions just a little bit. And I'm going to talk a little more about data and how important that is in the industry. I read an article here recently that the technology moves so rapidly that new approaches and ideas can emerge and fade within short time scales. This is especially evident in the energy world, where the evolution of established technologies coupled with increasing influence of digital innovation together with customer demand and government policies are changing the way companies operate. I'm gonna throw something at you that's pretty interesting. It's number crunching data analytics. The volume of data in the world is growing at an unprecedented rate. Even the vocabulary used to describe it has to expand to keep up. Where once it was a megabyte term, such is a yottabyte. And I don't know how many of you guys have heard of a yottabyte, but to put in perspective, it would take approximately 11 trillion years to download a yottabyte from the internet using high-powered broadband. These are types of volumes that we may be dealing with in the decades to come. But data only becomes useful when it can be handled properly. Mathematical treatment of data or analysis helps companies make it faster, better, and more focused business decisions in the world where the quantity of data could become overwhelming. And I'll give you an example. In the energy industry world, increased use of sensors and real-time data acquisitions are already being experimented. Growth in the volume, variety, and velocity of the data gathering for operations. For example, BP is using big data analysis technology to screen huge geoscience data sets. In a project in the UK and the North Sea, data from 5,000 wells was analyzed in just a few seconds, whereas a 100-well data set would normally take a geologist a month to analyze. I mean, you're talking about closing up a gap there on that. And Ron, what are you seeing and what are you hearing from industry about, collecting all of this data and how it can be useful in the future?
One of the really interesting technologies that's being looked at more and more, of course, is drone use in all aspects of the Bakken. You think about the value of drone use, and we got a lot of remote monitoring that we've done through SCADA and other things. That these are very high-tech well sites now. You try and minimize your trips to these wells. But when we look at drone use, just about anybody, even me, even I, could go out and fly a drone right now and get data.
Right.
But the challenge is that you get so much data, and you need timely evaluation and review of that data in order to pick out something that might be a spill or leak or something like that. You can't just put it all into a huge database and spend the next weeks looking at it. So I've seen a couple of presentations from some rural technology leaders like GE. I saw last month I saw a presentation from GE. They're beginning to come out with data recognition software so that bam, a red flag goes up when it sees something unique, and you can train the data. That is going to be the key to data management, is just like what you read there, Dave, in terms of efficiency. How do we use data gathered does not become efficient unless you find a way to manage and review that data quickly and weed out what you don't need and get to what you do need. So a lot of opportunities there in terms of data management, from everything from daily well production to comparing. That's one of the things about North Dakota. We have two things in North Dakota that are unique to the world in oil and gas. A is we've got a core library in Grand Forks, which we have the state of North Dakota has required that every well drilled continues to log and monitor each of these cuttings off of these wells. So that's where Harold Hamm went when he went to look at the Bakken and what he thought was some great opportunities, the core library at the University of North Dakota. Secondly is we've got an oil and gas division that has real-time information on all of the wells drilled, and you can find out anything you want off of the reports, monthly reports off of an oil well in terms of what it's producing, when it started producing, and everything that's ever come out of that well. And companies use these. They look at all of their competitors' wells, and they look at their wells. In other states, you've got to go to the agency. You've got to pull out the data. You've got to manually look. So we are well ahead in terms of data management to this point. But now we need to get to that point you're reading about in that letter where, bam, I can analyze all 13,000 wells and show me the three things that are uniquely inherent to successful wells that those companies are using that I am not. Or geologists from all over the world can sit at their laptops and do that rather than going courthouse to courthouse or file to file.
As we talk about all the leading technologies and what's happening, and North Dakota taking advantage of that, I've been blessed to be associated with a couple new technologies. I was sharing with Ron a little bit earlier of a group called G-Therm Energy that's actually using some of the existing technologies of oil enhancement using CO2, which Ron alluded to, but they're using radio waves too to actually pressurize this opportunity to produce more oil from some of these older wells or fields. But the other thing that they're creating is a geothermal reaction down below because of the heat that they're generating, and they're able to capture that heat. And they're working with some of the big players out there, GE and Siemens, into capturing that and using that electricity now. And I'll call it free electricity, but as we know, it's not free. But we know that there's such a need as we continue to develop wells out there, the amount of electricity that's needed as well. So, I mean, this is just a little bit of what's happening out there. I'm sure there's other companies that are doing some of the same kind of things, but pretty cool stuff.
It's an amazing geological resource that we have below the ground in the Williston Basin of western North Dakota, and there are so many derivatives that can come off of every unit of energy. And I think, Dave, you're hitting it right on the head. We've got this incredible seabed of salt water down there that's non-usable for anything. And how do we figure out how to add value and eliminate that salt and use that water for our water needs going forward? Huge challenges, huge opportunities. Going to take a lot of investment, but it's really all about technology. And I like to say, when you think about energy in America, where do you think a barrel is more, or a unit of energy is produced more environmentally friendly? In North Dakota, or the United States, or somewhere in northern China or northern Russia or somewhere else in the world? And that's really what we should be talking about here. Is we produce energy cleaner, safer, and more environmentally friendly here, and every barrel we produce here is one less that's got to come from somewhere else.
You know, that kind of leads me into my last topic conversation, and I've had this conversation with Ron in the past, and he kind of alluded to it a little bit about water. And, you know, I don't care what anybody says, but water is our number one resource, natural resource that we have to protect out there. And, you know, North Dakota, I mean, we have abundance of water with the Missouri River, no question about it. But I think the key right now that industry is looking at, and I think the entire world is looking at, but specifically in the United States, is, you know, protecting that resource. But how do we do that when we're using so much water for fracking right now? And I just really think the reuse of water is going to become more and more important all the time.
Well, the use of water in the fractures has gone up because we're getting better wells as a result of it. It's still a minuscule of water that comes by the bridge here in Bismarck-Mandan. It's like 4 seconds worth of water that flows by this bridge every day. So, but reusing that non-potable water that's down there, we've got a whole sea full of it at 2 miles beneath our feet, and it's there, and we got to figure that one out.
And we will. We got a lot of smart people out there, and I've been blessed to be associated with this one company called Ultra 3X that is actually looking at 3 different technologies to recycle water. So, you know, there's so many more things that we could talk about. Maybe we can get Ron to come back again. There's a big show coming up in May that really brings a lot of industries in. What's the date on that, North Dakota?
May 22 to 24, and that will be the big technology show next year at the Williston Basin Petroleum Conference at the Bismarck Event Center.
God bless you guys. This is Rockin Dave Blair signing off. Thanks, Ron.